Good morning, How to Web. How are you doing today? Very good. I'm excited to be here on this Build and Grow stage. Excited to be at the largest tech conference in Eastern Europe in the beautiful city of Bucharest, which is the very beating heart of the Eastern European tech ecosystem. So great to be here today. My name is Bram. I come from Belgium. So I traveled here yesterday, coming from Belgium, excited to be here in Bucharest. I lead the product and technology teams here at Showpad, but I feel right at home here on this build and grow stage, having been a builder myself. So I did some engineering, some coding in my time, have done product management, have done engineering management. But before joining Showpad, also built a company myself. So growing a company and now actually growing a leadership team and a team at Showpad. Showpad builds a software for B2B enterprise sales teams. So we equip these sales teams with the right knowledge, right? So the right content, the right tools to actually present, and then also the right training, with the ultimate goal of making sure that you have sort of average sales reps to turn them into the most top-performing sales reps, but at the same time also make them trusted advisors towards their B2B buyers, and to make sure that you have a really differentiating buyer experience in there. And this is what is called the sales enablement category. We have been shaping that category as a company. We have about 1,400 customers. 60% of those customers are actually enterprise customers. So that means they have very large sales teams, typically number of employees more than 4,000 people. On the platform, we have about 600,000 active users, and we build that software with 400 employees that are across the globe, and our users are also across the globe, and we now have 20 of those 400 people here in the heart of Bucharest, where we're building up a new team. And that translates in a lot of recognition from different analysts, a lot of customer satisfaction as well, 98%, and great retention in that enterprise segment. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the company. I want to learn a little bit more about you. So first of all, I want you to just raise your hand, and raise your right hand if you are on the product side of the aisle. The product side, great, okay. Raise your left hand if you're on the engineering side of things. Yes, quite a lot of engineers, more than product for sure. This is the normal ratio, of course. Then maybe my second question, raise your right hand if you're on the sales side of the business. Yes, some sales in the room. And if you're on the marketing side, raise your left hand. Yeah, I see some people raising both hands. Great, sales and marketing together. That is what sales enablement is about, typically. Sales and marketing joining together. And then my last question, who's here from Europe? If you're right hand, yes. Europe and America? No, yes, one American, great, very, very good to see. So if you raised your hand right now, this story, the story I'm going to tell you is for you, so listen up. This is a real story about how AI transformed both the teams, but also how we build software today at Showpad. And that brings me to the unavoidable question that we have today. Just checking my clicker stopped working. So if we advance the slides, let me try again. Yeah, okay, here we're good. So that brings me to the unavoidable question that we have today. The promise of AI, as you heard in this panel, is actually really large. Does AI make us more productive in ways that actually matter? Can you roll it out today in ways that matter? And I think if you heard the previous panel, and I have some kind of examples of that, the promise of AI and the transformation of it is huge. And most of that is driven by people like myself, by CEOs, by startup founders. And you have some examples here. The Klarna AI assistant, for example, now handles 2/3 of all the customer service chats in the first month. You have the Shopify CEO going on the record saying no new hires without proof of AI can't actually do the job. You have Duolingo that cut 10% of their contractor workforce as the company embraces AI, and lots more examples that start hinting at we're replacing roles, we're replacing people with AI. So that's the story that lives out there. But if you start looking at some of the analysis that is being done, the analyst work on that, you see, for example, the Dora reports. They recently released a report on the state of AI-assisted software development, and they showed that AI adoption in larger companies, I think it's easier in startups, but in larger companies, actually has a negligible effect on overall organizational performance when platform quality is low. So the importance of having a DevOps function, a platform function, is really important. Then you have BCG going on the record saying 30 to 50% enhancement in performance and efficiency. That's kind of what you can shoot for right now. And then the State of AI in Business in 2025 was released by MIT, very recent article. I think it was mentioned in the panel as well, if I heard. There's 30 to 40 billion of investment in Gen AI that has been done, but only 5% of that 30 to 40 billion is integrated in AI pilots that are generating significant value. So there's a clear mismatch between the promise that is out there and the real impact it is driving in the field. So I want to give you a look at how we transformed internally. So this is going to be a real story, and I'm going to start with a bit of a failure, if I'm honest. So when we started rolling out AI, and this is pretty much a year ago, a bit over a year ago, we rolled out GitHub Copilot. And essentially our tactic was, I think it's going to adopt itself. That was more or less what we thought was going to happen. The reason we thought that was going to happen is because, and there's lots of engineers here in the room, these engineers, they tend to be early adopters of new technology. So they were building, using these tools at home. Some of them were doing side projects. As engineers, we love our side projects. Some of them were doing startups on the side, and they were all using that new technology. So we assumed, and we assumed wrongly, that those same engineers that were doing that at home, they would actually be using that in their day-to-day job if we just provided the right tool. So when we started looking at the data, and I have the data here up on the screen, that's the monthly active usage pretty much a year ago, so in March, April, and May of last year, the monthly active usage showed that 60% of our engineers were not using the AI tool. So that means they were either not transforming the way they were working, or they were using tools that we did not provide, which is also a real chance. So we definitely heard stories about using Cursor and using some of the other tools that were out there already that we did not really provision. So it was very clear that thinking that it was going to adopt itself was not the right strategy. So I brought the team together in an on-site, and this was somewhere in January, February, where we decided that we need to give a very clear mandate towards the teams. And this is actually a screenshot from the post that we did after we did that on-site, where we needed to make it very clear to our teams that it is absolutely a must for us as a company. And Showpad right now is a profitable company. We do about 100 million in recurring revenue, profitable company. It is a must for us to be at the cutting edge of AI-assisted productivity. And we need to do that not just in engineering. It's not an engineering problem. We need to do it across all of the functions. Analytics, marketing, product, design. All of them really need to rethink how to work using AI and to become more productive with AI. We were going to support that effort by doing 3 things. So the first one is to experiment with tooling, because clearly we were not at the point that tools were mature. It was pretty much every week that we saw something being released by Cursor, by Windsurf, that would actually be better than what GitHub Copilot was offering. So you need to allow experimentation with tooling. And maybe this sounds like a trivial thing, but in a larger organization like Showpad, especially a profitable one, I had just spent 6 months trying to get rid of every unnecessary tool in our tool stack. So allowing that experimentation is really necessary. The second thing is to have these targeted learning and pilots. So make sure that you have a pilot around those tools that drives a business case to then actually procure that tool. And then finally, and this loops back to what was in the Dora report, is that you need to support that with having a clear investment in DevOps. So you need to have your DevOps team focus on that as the biggest initiative for them to drive. And we wrote a check, essentially, to experiment with tooling, but also to make sure that our DevOps team could really focus on that. And surprisingly, this brings me to kind of the grand experiment. This started a true grassroots movement. So it didn't need much more than sending out a mandate towards our teams and having them think about how to do this to start transforming. And like I said, this is not just an engineering story. We wanted this to drive change, AI-assisted productivity across all of the different functions. So I'm going to talk today about just 3 of those functions: engineering, product, and design. And we're going to start with engineering. And like I said, with engineering, this immediately started this grassroots movement. So I'm showing here 2 screenshots. So the first thing that they did was start up this guild. And a guild is like a cross-functional, so across the different engineering teams that we have at Showpad, they started an AI-assisted productivity tools guild to do a couple of things. So to share some of the war stories, the early case studies and success stories, to work around tooling, to look at the different pilots, and they selected champions from each of the different teams that were passionate, that were real drivers of change within the organization, so that you would drive change across all of the different engineering teams. And of course, we have a Slack channel aligned with that. That is our Guild AI Developer Productivity. We have the same actually for our product management at Guild AI Product Management. Productivity with AI is also a Slack channel where you have active conversation, where they share new tools, new news that's coming out, case studies, etc., to be able to share very rapidly. So if I look at our responsibility as a leadership team, was not just to support that grassroots movement, that's really important, but also not to make the same mistake again, is not to measure the AI impact. So not to look just at adoption. So the first thing we did with our team was to take a good look at what was out there from many different companies, and you see a lot of great logos on here, including Google, etc. And if you go across those, you can kind of bucket them into several metrics. There's non-negotiable metrics that are truly about impact, like the change failure rate, developer satisfaction scores, or some of that. And then there's lower tiers that go all the way to the sort of hype metrics. How many lines of code were generated by AI? Does it really matter? Not really, but it's a nice metric to show off. So, of course, you have to pick from those, and that's exactly what we did. So we picked a set of metrics, and I'll come back to the metrics in a minute. But the very first thing is also to start focusing on which use cases you're going to make more productive with AI. So we selected 4 different use cases across our engineering lifecycle that we wanted to focus on. I think the most obvious one is AI native coding. So using AI tools to write new code, to write also unit tests, of course. I'll come back to that. The second one is to review code. Reviewing code is, especially if you have a large organization, it's a time-consuming task, but it really ensures that you have high quality, And in our field, it's also a real compliance driver. So it's something that you have to do to be compliant with certain standards. But it takes up a lot of time, plus it tends to be a bottleneck in engineering teams. You're waiting for some other guy in the other team to review your code. That person has just gone to get coffee and so on, and it takes a while to deliver those results of that code review. The third one is testing, and testing is quite interesting because as a software industry, we've gone through this motion of sort of manual testing, true QA, where you would have a human test, not the code, but test the actual application, where the standard has now become automated testing, but automated testing ultimately still is handwritten code. It's handcrafted unit tests, integration tests, etc., that are being written. We're now able to transform that towards fully automated testing, where not only the test runs automated, but the test is also written in an automated way, is adapted in case some of the code changes. And then the fourth one was documentation. That's the human readability aspect. It's an important factor, of course, to focus on. Documentation is definitely an area where you can use AI to have better and more structured documentation. We set some metrics as well, 4 metrics that we chose to track adoption overall. So the first one is the adoption rate, and the target we are going after there is more than 90% use of AI tools in their daily or weekly, across key workflows, across the 4 focus areas that I mentioned. The second one, and I find this super important, if you start building a large team, developer satisfaction is hugely important. You have larger code bases, it becomes more complex. So we wanted to see higher developer productivity, especially as a profitable company, that's important. So a 30% boost of faster development on core development tools, or tasks rather, was the target we were after. On code quality, this is a very tangible, non-negotiable metric. You're looking at a target of 20 to 25% drop in post-deployment defects and fix time, something where we've seen great progress already. And then the last one is developer satisfaction. Focus on developer satisfaction. It's so important to have your engineers as the key champions behind this transformation. So what we're after is 80% that actually report strong benefits. You don't want to push them to use a tool that isn't delivering strong benefits. On the other hand, you also want to see these champions proactively reach out for new use cases. Maybe those 4 that we listed out are not going to be the final 4. There's more tasks and use cases, and we want to see that coming out of that group, not coming from a leadership perspective. So an important aspect was selecting the right tools. We went through, for the coding side, we went through quite a lot of different tools. So we started with GitHub Copilot. We looked at Windsurf. We looked at Cursor. We looked at Augment Code. I think the large difference with Augment Code is the amount of context that it can take in. So the big difference is that you're not looking at just a single file, but you're able to take the full context of a large repository, and we do have large repositories. We have some monoliths out there as well if you're an older company. So that becomes a large code base, and you need to understand the mental model for that whole code base, and Augment is really able to do that. The second one is that on the code review side, again, we went through a selection. GitLab Duo was one on the list. Ultimately, we went for CodeRabbit. CodeRabbit is now embedded in our GitLab CI/CD pipeline and does embedded reviews right there, even creates merge requests automatically. So quite exciting. I think the most important thing is to share some of the experiences that we had, the tangible stories that came out of each of those. So I want to start with one that, I don't know if are there Angular developers in the room, front-end developers? Yes, well, that's from Showpad, so yes, some more, yeah, fantastic. So you'll probably know that going from an Angular 10 towards Angular 19 is not a simple task. So we had a legacy tool that was still stuck on an older version, Angular 10. It was a smaller code base, but the team first assessed, and this was a full team effort, it's going to take us more or less a week to go from Angular 10 to Angular 19, because you have to go in small steps, and it's a lot of pain to go through everything that breaks once you do that kind of upgrade in package. A smart developer came back after 4 hours, where they had gone directly from Angular 10 to Angular 19. Not a team effort, a single developer effort. So if you bring that down to a cost perspective, you're looking at an initial cost of more or less 15,000 euros, something like that. That's brought down to a few hundred euros in terms of the actual cost that went into that. Plus, developer satisfaction. Nobody likes doing these upgrades, so very happy this was resolved. The second one is also a great story around some pressure. We are a company like any other, and sometimes we have commitments, we have analysts, etc. So we needed a feature that was an AI feature. It's an ability for sales reps to actually pitch and get, instead of feedback from their manager on their pitch, get feedback from AI. It's a fairly simple use case, but it was an existing code base, and the team that was usually working on that was not available during that time. So we had to look for a different team, had never worked on this code base before. So using Augment Code, again, they had estimated that they would work on this feature for 2 weeks with the full team. And this is a true eating your own dog food or drinking your own champagne story, because it was actually the DevOps team within Showpad that took on the task to write this feature. They estimated 2 weeks. They were going to build it with these AI tools. And they delivered the feature ultimately in 4 days. 4 days until it was fully finished. And they reinvested that 2-week investment. I didn't take it away from them. That 2-week investment went into writing better unit tests, upping the quality of the AI suggestions of the prompt, etc. That still went into making a better feature out there. And then the third one was a pipeline. So our CI/CD pipeline, you know, if you're part of an organization, this tends to break. So now we've embedded Augment CLI as part of that pipeline, and it was able to resolve a pretty nasty kind of failure in our pipeline that was blocking the pipeline in a minimum amount of time. So really reduced to a few hours, actually, instead of more or less a day of work that typically it would take on resolving these failures. So huge benefits in terms of some of these war stories that we were seeing. I want to dive into some of these use cases. So on the code review side, it's some interesting results. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is in the blue, these are the human suggestions. So if you write some code, another developer comes in and they write, here is what you need to improve on your code for it to go to production. That is what you see in blue. In the purple, you see where CodeRabbit, AI, started doing more suggestions, doing more reviews. So the first thing you see is that we had a 37% increase in the number of suggestions. So that hints at the quality, the overall quality is going up in our code base and in our code review. At the same time, you see the human suggestions going down. So 65% reduction in reviewer workload, actual human workload in reviewing an MR when using CodeRabbit. Another pretty stellar kind of metric once we started tracking this. So the impact on onboarding, this was with Augment Code. So typically a developer, if we hire a new developer, it would take them 44 days before they would reach their 10th merge request into our repositories. 44 days, so a little bit over 2 months of working days if you look at that. Once we introduced Augment Code, it helps to understand a new code base, and we saw that number drop for those new engineers coming on board with 65% faster onboarding. So it is now 19 days before they reach 10 MRs into our production pipeline. So really amazing results that you're seeing in terms of faster AI adoption. Productivity boost is pretty high, so high adoption, 94% of tools, great to see that. Cycle time is also starting to reduce, minus 46%. But more than anything, I wanted to focus on enthusiasm, developer enthusiasm, and no better way than to show you a Slack screenshot. And you see the screenshot right here. This is what happened when we ran out of the trial for CodeRabbit. So we had been trialing CodeRabbit for, I think, a month or a month and a half, and we ran out of the trial. We have a bit of a process, so I have to go to the CEO and the CFO to build a business case to actually get a tool procured. That's a normal process in our size of company. So I'll just read some of the things that were being said there on that Slack thread. Much time saved when it comes to documenting MRs, great for finding dumb bugs, time saved for teammates, please procure, thanks, and 13 upvotes. Then the next engineer says, Wesley, senior developer, could be an AI-enabled developer if we just paid up. And it kind of goes on after that. Shortens the review cycle, allows human reviewers to spend more time efficiently. Again, 19 upvotes right away. I absolutely love the learning concepts here on the other side. And then it finally goes into where it gets a little bit pushy. No reason not to, at $30 per developer per month, why waste time making a business case? Let's just do this. So it was a real revolt going on, and then it goes into GIFs and so on. You know how those things go. But people were really pushing us to make sure that they had this tool. So developer satisfaction was huge overall. This is still, for engineering, huge benefits, but it's not necessarily transforming the role of the engineer. So what we are seeing is that they're more productive at the things that they already do. They're more satisfied with the job they already do. It's not pushing their skill set. This is where in product it becomes a bit of a different story. And this is a great story, again, to be able to share. So here we had our help center teams, so self-service teams. They write the documentation for Showpad. We're a pretty high-paced team. So the problems they have is that documentation evolves very quickly, the product evolves quickly, the documentation then lags behind, and it is a very manual and time-consuming process. So, of course, we made this part of our performance reviews for all of the leaders, saying you need to focus on thinking about how your team can do things with AI-assisted productivity. And it's super important to mention, this is not a team that has skill sets that are development skill sets. They are really good at writing. They're true writers. They have very great skills. They are very good at making videos and explaining things to humans, but they have never written code before. So this is a great story where in July 2025, this year still, this manager, the manager of this the self-service team, actually used AI to start vibe coding an internal tool. So he connected the tools that he already has, which was Zendesk, etc., used AI to actually figure out how can I connect to the API, found the tokens through like vibe coding with AI, to then a month later, they had built this prototype of an internal tool, and it was a working prototype that now went across all of the different tools, Jira, Zendesk, Pendo, Localize, bringing in, using the API with a script they had written and brought into a beautiful interface that team is now internally using. This is not just an AI-assisted productivity boost. This is changing the skill set of a team. This is lowering the barrier to entry to write kind of these internal tools, things that would have never been possible before. Maybe this becomes a startup of its own. You never know. This becomes a pitch contest, but this was a great result in terms of what the team delivered. Then on the design side, design is always a bit of a different story. Design people are craftsmen. They like to spend time on actually noodling with some of these designs. And here, we partnered, when I was here last with Rizvan, we looked at the winner of last year's Spotlight contest. This was still called Fig Vision. This was probably on the stage. I was not here last year, but I assume it was on the stage, where they wrote a check, and that check is now being invested in actually running a pilot with companies like Showpad and transforming the way that we do prototyping. One of the biggest benefits here, again, is that you can do prototyping that is based on your design system internally, that is using your code system. So it's truly built for the enterprise. We're super excited to be partnering with the winner of last year's Spotlight. So I hope to meet the winner of this year's Spotlight and see if there's any companies that can help us transform further. Now, as I summarize some of these things, it's clear that experimentation had led to some impactful results. Again, this has only been 8 months that we've been truly focusing on this. So I want you to take some learnings into how you can transform this into a maturity recipe. And this I've not invented this ourselves, but if you look back at this framework, and this is on Lenny's newsletter if you want to find it online, this is how to scale AI adoption, how to make it go faster. So the first thing is explain the how. So as a leadership team, you have a responsibility to give a clear mandate, what to focus on, etc. And then the second thing is that you need to track and reward adoption. We did that through those metrics that we said. We showcase those war stories. We even give it as part of some of our reward system and internal benefits. The third element is that procurement can become a bottleneck, and you need to allow some of the red tape cutting. So you need to allow experimentation with tools, where typically in a larger company this could become a problem. The fourth one is that these early enthusiasts, some of the great people that built these first tools, these war stories, you need to turn them into teachers. So the presentation that I'm now doing internally, or externally rather, was actually done internally towards our entire leadership team, towards our executive team as well, sharing some of those stories, and they become the real champions of driving change. And then the last one is the one that I showed. You need to prioritize, of course, the use cases that matter the most. And this is not a top-down leadership thing. You really need to go down to the functional leaders that understand where the biggest bottlenecks are. And I think our product example was of one of the key examples. That person knew exactly what was taking them a lot of time and used AI to transform the way that they work today. So you can use that, and we use it now internally, this framework, because you see that across all of these functions where we're transforming, we're not at the same maturity level. So you can score yourselves on each of those categories. And for engineering, we're actually pretty good. We score ourselves a 4.8 out of 5. If you look at, for example, product, we're not quite there yet in terms of product management. So there's definitely still areas on tracking and rewarding adoption, for example, where we haven't changed enough. But important is this is a change management track. It's okay to not be there yet. It takes some time before this gets adopted. Now we're starting to scale this. So we brought this to our leadership team. We've done a senior leadership team offsite with the entire company. The CEO is excited about this. The board is pushing for this transformation. So we're now bringing this to all of the different teams. I think the payoff is huge. Because if you use AI to transform the way your teams work, it leads to innovation. So transformation leads to innovation. And of course, on the sales side, we drink our own champagne because we've used a lot of that innovation to drive effectiveness for sales reps in eating our own dog food, drinking our own champagne. So we have embraced AI to enable different sales use cases. So some examples are on here. We have a RAG-based search, for example, to find not just content, but answers. And now we're shipping an AI feature pretty much every single quarter. So this is driving true innovation spirit next to transformation. And this is leading to key results. So Showpad was recognized by analysts with its superior vision, includes a responsible introduction of AI across its AI platform. We're seeing better buyer experiences. So this AI pitching, this role play that I talked about, we see that sales reps, they practice more because they're more comfortable practicing with AI than sending something to their manager. So this leads to better buyer experiences. Plus, we're seeing clear business outcomes, 5.5% improvement in quota attainment for sales teams using Showpad AI. So we're now on the next frontier of AI when it comes to innovation. We are building and seeing a huge gap in terms of AI agents supporting sellers. Whereas everybody focused on Agentforce, you see Gong, etc., some of the larger companies, all of them build software for tech companies, for inside sales. But 40% of the sales reps in the world are people that go out on the road every single day. They spend 4 days in the week visiting customers. And actually, at the end of the week, they need to use their memory. They write paper notes, of course. They take pictures, etc., of that. At the end of the week or at the end of the day, they kind of need to remember what was said. They need to do a CRM update. So all of that data is not really great quality. And we see a real gap, a real opportunity to build the first AI agent that is uniquely designed for enterprise field sellers. Some of the trends they talked about in the panel is what we are implementing today. So voice-to-voice interaction, having a sales rep, when they come back in their car, talk directly to an AI agent, help them craft that CRM update, have them craft that follow-up email is some of the agentic systems that we are building today. And we believe in a huge potential in terms of transforming how productive field sales teams are. Actually, we think that there will be a transformation back towards field selling because AI allows humans to focus on what they are truly good at. That is building a connection. That is building up trust with somebody rather than doing something boring like a CRM update that was mandated by your manager. And that brings me to a final note to you as an audience here at Build and Grow, to see all of the startups that are here today. This is our opportunity for change. So we changed internally, but I truly feel we need to take this opportunity as a European. We're a European company. There's a lot of Europeans here in the room as well. Why is it a must for us to transform with AI, to become more productive with AI? I feel that overall Europe has missed some of the tech wave. We were implementers of the tech wave, but the true innovation, the talent density, was in Silicon Valley. It was led by the US. Here you have a quote by Harry Stebbings, a recent quote. He is a big VC investor, has a great podcast, 20 VC, and he has started something up called Project Europe. It is time to change the narrative that Europe cannot build massive companies. Europe can and will build the most defining companies of our time. So we all have an opportunity, but also a responsibility here in the room to build some of the tools that need to be built to transform how AI-assisted productivity is rolled out, how to become very cutting edge of your function in AI, to transform what your function looks like. So build some of those tools, build new startups that will become those big companies of the future. But most of all, here together, we're all together here, share those war stories, share how you're building together and build that community here in Europe, in Eastern Europe. Thank you very much.